From Careco TV, one of the longest running outdoor programs on television today, exploring the country and the coast in search of adventures. From the mountains of the Great Northwest to the shores of the Atlantic Ocean, this is Americana Outdoors, presented by Garmin. This week on Americana Outdoors, we're on Fayette County Reservoir with professional angler Alton Jones. Alton is well known and well respected within the fishing community, and he's here today to share some tips and tricks for bass fishing that he's accumulated over the years, all while utilizing his trusty Garmin Electronics to get the job done. Let's catch up with Alton as he makes his way out to his first location of the day and learn how he uses his Garmin mapping units to decide where to drop his force trolling motor and cast a line.
Just a quick little tip as we're idling around. I have several different setups I use on my console electronics. And this is the setup that I use for my side view. And I still want to be able to see my traditional, and I want to be able to see my mapping, but I want an entire dedicated screen for side view. I need to be able to see every detail that's on there. So I don't like splitting a screen with just a little bit of side view and a little bit of, this is one of the things that I need the whole screen for. So what I do is I've got my preset set. Number 4 is my side view, and number 4 over here is the setup that I want with my map and my traditional when I'm running side view. So I know whenever I want to use side view, if I punch number 4 on both units, it takes me exactly to where I want to be. So this is my first time on this lake this year, and I don't really know what the grass is set up like, because it changes every year. But we're going to go back here and check a little submerged pond dam. It's very shallow. It's going to be about 2 or 3 feet on top is all it's going to be. And I'm hoping that there's a little bit of vegetation growing on the top of that thing right there. I'm going to probably throw like a lipless crankbait, maybe just a shallow running crankbait, and I might slow down with a drop shot or a Senko or something like that as well. But we're just going to fish, and we're going to let every bite sort of dictate what we're going to do. There's one. This feels like a pretty good fish too. If I can get him out, it's the question. Oh yeah, it's a nice one. Big old fatty. Look at that. Well, he ate it. I'm just pitching a little tube and getting in close to these cattails. That's 2 casts in a row that I had a bite. We may have just finally gotten in an area that had them. Look how healthy that little fish is right there, though. All right, I want to do that again. Whenever I'm fishing cattails, I'm looking for points and pockets. I'm trying to determine if the fish are on one or the other. It makes you a lot more efficient. If you know they're just on the little points, you don't have to bother dipping your bait back into every little pocket. Now, kind of the theory behind flipping and pitching is you're trying to predict where you think a bass is sitting, and you're trying to drop that bait right on his head. So it's not something that I'm going to throw over there and I'm going to spend time, I'm going to work it back to the boat. If you watch, my bait on any given pitch is seldom in the water more than 10 or 15 seconds. I may let it get down in there once and make sure it gets to the bottom and hop it a couple of times, maybe hop it over one limb, and if I don't get one, I'm reeling it and I'm going to throw it at the next target.
Before we head out for the first commercial break of the day, let's take a moment to watch a Garmin tip from Alton and learn how he sets up depth shading on his Garmin mapping units to locate productive areas on a lake.
Finding a good spot on a map in a productive area for me is a very visual process. And you see how that all my depth contours, I've got different depths shaded in different colors. Let me show you how to set that up really quick. If you just go down here to your menu, hit the 3 dots, go to layers, go to water, go to depth shading, and then that turns depth shading on and off. I just turned it off. That's your map without depth shading. I turn it on and it brings all the color in. Now these 3 little dots to the side, if you tap those, here are the depth ranges that I have set up. Now, I have them set up in 5-foot intervals, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. So let's say I found that, hey, today the fish are really biting in 15 to 20 feet of water. I can take this particular range right here and I can just change my color. Let's set that puppy red, okay? Now it's really gonna jump out like a sore thumb on this map and show me that exact depth zone that I think is the most productive for today's fishing. So just a little tip that will help you really dial in once you develop a key depth range.
We'll return to the water in just a moment, but in the meantime, take this opportunity to subscribe to our Americana Outdoors YouTube channel. Welcome back to Americana Outdoors. We're spending time on the water with pro angler Alton Jones as he shares insight into the world of bass fishing. And speaking of bass, it looks like he's about to reel in a big one.
There's one. Oh man, he's got me around the cattail too. I mean, these cattails are tough things. I've got him. Come on, here he goes. Nice one too. Oh yeah, look at that. It's a good little fish. It's amazing how tough one little strand of tule can be. That he can hang me up around that and I can't pull him off with 40-pound braid. That one, I never felt the bite. You know, when you're flipping, you got to be watching your line, and you've got to. When I tightened up, he was just on there and it was just a little bit soft, and I'm like, is that a cattail or is that a fish? If you feel any movement on that bait, you want to lean into him pretty hard. That one's a little torn up on the top. Let me give you a little tip on a hook set for flipping anything with a straight shank hook and vegetation, especially a tube. And that is, you never want a hook set with what I call a slack line. You don't want to like drop your rod and then snap him, especially with braided line. What you want to do is you want to pull and get that line tight, and then just lean into him really hard. If you snap your rod hard, you know braided line doesn't stretch. And so what happens? Let's say my hand here is the fish's mouth, so the fish has the bait right in there. Okay. If I slackline him, I'm going to pull it so hard that tungsten weight is going to pop that fish's mouth open, and the bait's just going to come out. So what you want, when I lean hard, it's just going to kind of not pop his mouth open. It's just going to open it a little bit, and that'll allow that hook to catch. And so don't slackline them, feel them, get the line tight. You want to lean in really hard, but you don't want to like, it's not a whoosh, it's a pull tight and then There's one. Oh, I still got him. He got me in the stuff. He's a nice fish. Now is he off? Man, I had him. I think I got him still. He's around that cattail root. Let me see if I can get over and get him. Now I can't tell. Yeah, he's still there. There we go. He just had me all balled up in there. All right. Well, that's 3 bites on this little stretch in about 10 minutes. So that's what I call a future 10-pounder right there. Let's go back and grow up. And once I find a little area that I've caught a fish there and I've caught a fish here where I just feel like I'm around some, I'm gonna put my poles down and I'm just gonna pick apart. I started over here now and I'm just gonna, every little place that looks like a good ambush spot, a little point, little pocket, little isolated clump, I'm gonna make one pitch there. Let me just explain to you kind of a pitch cast really quick. What's going to create the cast is just the pendulum swing of the bait, just the swing. So what I like to do is I like to start with my rod tip high, come back to a low position and swing, and then I'm going to finish with my rod tip high, okay? And that's allowing me to keep this bait low to the water all the way out there. And that's how you get a light splash. If your bait's too high off the water on your entry, you know, you're going to make a little bit too much noise. When you get really good at it, you'll get to where you can actually alter the trajectory of the lure just a little bit in midair, you know, 5 or 6 inches left or right. You can kind of get to where you can sort of steer it when it's on the way out there.
All right, it's time for the next Garmin tip of the day. This time, it's all about relief shading.
If you just look at my normal Navionics contours, you can kind of tell that there's something out here, but you don't really see the detail of what it is. But you can activate relief shading. And look here, you can clearly see that there's a roadbed coming out here, and there's a bridge where that creek channel goes under it. But the relief shading gives you so much more detail. Look here when I zoom out on this flat. Look, you can see a road cutting up here, another road coming in here and making a circle. But things that you never would see, or at least wouldn't see as clearly with just standard contours. You know, this is kind of the same area right here without the relief shading. So the relief shading just gives you a much greater visual impact of exactly what it is under the water that you're really looking at. It's great for seeing like submerged ponds. Like, look at here, there's a pond right there. Look how that thing looks. You can actually see the elevated dam that they built up to impound that water on that pond. But you can see every roadbed. There's another pond, a little horseshoe-shaped dam, another pond. The features on the end of every little point will jump out. It will give you a much better understanding of the lake you're fishing, maybe why an area that you've caught fish before. Maybe you can learn why those fish actually use that spot. And maybe you'll be able to then look at it and duplicate that spot. So, you know, this is something I'm using mainly for deep water fishing. It's not something I'm using a lot if I'm fishing in 2 feet of water, but if I'm in 10 feet plus, relief shading is always going to play a huge part in my map study in preparation for a day of fishing.
We'll return to the water in just a moment, but in the meantime, take this opportunity to subscribe to our Americana Outdoors YouTube channel. As we'll see in just a moment, keeping an eye on your surroundings at the surface level is just as important as keeping a watchful eye on your electronics.
I don't know if it's a tilapia or if it's a bass swimming through. Look, right there. He got it. Look at that. He wasn't very big, but he was there. So when you're fishing visible vegetation, you always want to be very aware, watch for anything moving those cattails, because it's usually a fish, especially if you don't see a turtle on the surface or something. I just saw that cattail twitch, and he was probably chasing a little minnow in there. And you know, but if you'll be observant and then make a good, careful presentation, a lot of times you'll get rewarded. You know, if you're not paying attention, I would have never known to throw right there. I mean, there's 100 little clumps right here in front of me that look like that, but I knew to throw at that one just because of carefully watching and observing what's going on around me. There's one. Little guy. You know, all these cattails, they look the same, but you know, this is where electronics are really important. This is like traditional sonar, is it shows me that, so most of these cattails have like 2 to 2.5 feet on the outside edge of them. This little set right here has about 4 feet of water on the outside edge. There's just a little bit of a drain running up through here to funnel some fish in here. So I'm always watching for those subtle irregularities on the bottom. And so, you know, don't think just because you're flipping cattails you don't need your electronics.
For our third Garmin tip of the day, let's take a closer look at Garmin Livescope, as Alton further explains how he uses it to watch for those subtle irregularities on the bottom.
So I do use Livescope a lot, even in shallow water. Right now I'm in less than 4 feet of water. I'm about 3.5. And I'm just going to show you a few of the settings. You notice right now it's a real fuzzy setting. I'm not getting a lot out here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to be able to turn up my gain to like 80% or more. Now watch what happens to my screen when I do this. Okay, see that's almost unusable there because I've got a lot of gain, but I've got so much clutter and interference in there. So let me show you a secret setting right here. Bring up my little toolbar, hit my little 3 buttons over there. Now I'm going to go to sonar setup. I'm going to go to appearance. There's a little thing over here called color limit. I want you to turn that up to about 75 to 77%. Watch this picture as I bring it up. Even with my gain turned way up, look at that. Now I can pan around and I can really look for any kind of an object or a fish or whatever on the bottom. If I pan left, I'll start seeing some vegetation. Now you can see the grass. This is starting to get into vegetation right in here. What I like to do is I like to move really slow. In fact, I've got my power poles down, so I'm stopped. And I like to aim it at something and then see if I'm seeing any motion in there, anything move like a fish. And then I'll go 1 or 2 degrees to the right and stop and look. 1 or 2 degrees more to the right. Now I'm coming to the edge of the grass. Look at there, there's a fish right there, just about 10 feet in front of the boat. Let's see. So Livescope is definitely a tool that will help you in shallow water. Now, you can actually see fish with it, but a lot of times I'm really using it to find like the outside edge of a weed line. If I see a fish, I'm certainly going to cast at it, but like if I want to find the outside edge, okay, there's solid weeds there. If I pan to the right, I can just find that tapered edge. So I know if I cast 40 feet right there, I'm going right to the outside edge of those weeds.
We'll return to the water in just a moment, but in the meantime, take this opportunity to subscribe to our Americana Outdoors YouTube channel. As we wrap up our day on the water with Alton Jones, we've made some moves to another area of Fayette County Reservoir, and it looks like making those moves is about to pay off with some big rewards.
I got him, good one, good fish. That's why I came over here, because sometimes there's a big fish in here, and this is a big one. Come on, baby. Oh yeah, that's a nice one. Oh man, this is the one that in a tournament would make me really nervous because he's so big. Oh yeah. Come here, sweetheart. Well over 5, maybe close to 6. I don't know. She's a 5. She's a 5 something. Oh yeah. Look at that fish. That's what we call top lip dead center, but came right out. That's a beauty. There's one. Get off of there. That's another nice one. There we go. That's a good solid 2.5-year-old right there. That's a healthy fish, you know. This fish is fat from its tail all the way up. This is a lake that's in really good shape right now. Yep, I got him. Oh, he's on there still, I think. Oh yeah, get him out over that tree. It's not a foot deep in there. Get in here. It's a 4-pounder too. And that's a beauty. Whew. You know, any isolated target, so this bank right here, there's really nothing along it except there was 2 or 3 trees that stick out off the bank. I mean, up on the bank, there's not enough water to hold them. But there's a foot of water under that tree, and it's just enough on the inside of that grass to produce a fish like this. All right, baby.
For our final Garmin tip of the day, Alton's going to explain to us how he uses Garmin Livescope and the Garmin Force Trolling Motor in unison to make himself a force to be reckoned with when he's on the water.
When you're live scoping, I can't overemphasize the importance of the Garmin Force Trolling Motor matched with Livescope, and a couple of reasons for that. Number one, if you're using an old style trolling motor that's just a mechanical foot pedal connected to a cable, what happens is you're going to point over there and on your Livescope, all of a sudden you see fish, okay? Well, you turn it loose. If your boat's drifting at all, that foot on that trolling motor is going to start spinning on its own. It's going to, you know, path of least resistance, and you're no longer pointed at that fish. Whereas when I take my foot off that pedal, that motor is going to stay pointed exactly toward where I had it pointed before. It's going to stay at that exact angle, so I don't have to worry about it flip-flopping on me. The other area where Garmin is just heads and tails above any other trolling motor is I like to look and scan like just a degree or two at a time. I'm just barely turn it and look. Turn it, look for motion. Turn it, look for motion. Turn it, look for motion. And I can make these little bitty micro adjustments to it as I'm scanning, which one, it allows me to really identify fish that would be hard to see if I wasn't looking so closely. And the other thing is to really fine tune on a fish once I find him, so I know exactly where that cast needs to go. So if you're not using the Force Trolling Motor, you're really not getting as much out of Livescope as you possibly could. You know, kind of an ulterior motive that we had today, besides getting my new Ranger set up for the season, was we wanted to get some good content for my Garmin Electronics. We talked a lot today about using them in shallow water. We talked a lot today about my console. You know, the units on my console, everybody thinks Livescope, 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 and it's great, but the units on my console are really important. We talked a lot about that, how the mapping comes into play, how I set my screens up for different scenarios when I'm side scanning or using traditional sonar, or, you know, all the different things that I do, how to use the preset buttons so that you can quickly get back to your screen setup. And then we also talked about the trolling motor and how important it is when you're live scoping to have a trolling motor like the Garmin Force, where I can just make those micro adjustments as I'm scanning so that I can be super precise when I see a fish, that I can make the right cast.
Hey, thank you for watching, and join us again next week on a new episode of Americana Outdoors. Americana Outdoors is a Careco TV production.